to us. It was such a nice way of getting you to sort of mix up your strategy, because we identified that like when you sort of died, quote unquote, in this game, it was because you were probably doing something somewhat suboptimal anyway. So by kind of knocking out one of your functions, it forced you to adapt to the situation and maybe choose a somewhat of a different play style, get you to kind of wake up and try something different.
And there's certainly people who experience the system as really punishing, or as maybe not quite what they wanted out of something like that. But for us, it was like it was the best compromise between sort of restarting all your progress, having you play fights over and over again, and have you progress and like switch up what you were doing. Yeah,
it felt right to this game. We talk, over the years, we've often talked about how you get these points. Sometimes you know right on the spot that you're during the course of development that you're making a design choice that will be somewhat polarizing, but it's the right choice for you to make, and that was one of those choices where like, well, some people may not like this very much, but we know why we're making this choice, and it feels like the right thing to do. So let's cross our fingers and go with it. And it tested well enough. We stuck with it.
And here you're going back to your apartment with feedback on one of the most critical decisions you've made earlier in the game.
Yeah, the old Junction Jan scene. This was I think this was your idea early on, the kind of like the later payoff of the. I think it was probably one of those hybrid things. Yeah. I think we had the pizza choice, and you're like, oh, dude, we could anyway. I don't know if your memory of it is clearer than mine.
I mean, I'm sure we just figured something out. It took all of us to make it.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the I think the scumbag and the sail hammer is a little tiny Bastion cameo in the background of that scene. Yeah. But we have like a really small number of these kind of full scene images like that throughout the game. Talking with Jen and we felt it was so important to capture these small, almost like mundane moments in their lives where these characters, you get a glimpse of them sort of happy together, which maybe the first time you're playing through, you don't quite know what it means just yet, but hopefully by the end of the game, it's made quite apparent. But it's all in service of like building up that relationship more over time and making sure you're not just purely going from battle to battle. Man, I think this is one of the coolest looking environments in this game.
Yeah, this is Jen bringing a lot of pain. Actually, even Camilo is doing environment art here.
Yeah. And I love the music piece here too, the high-rise theme that Darren created.
Yeah, those spinning. Yeah,
Camilo animated the kind of man, what are those called in real life? The things on top of rooftops.
Yeah,
that is not what they're
knows
called.
What the real life word for this thing in our video game is.
And this is an example of whatever a dumb. The mounting, you could sit here and watch the disappearances counter go up indefinitely every few moments
until the game crashes.
Yeah, probably
in like 6 years.
It might happen eventually. That would at least be in theme for it to do so. So this is things are.
Yeah, you're hearing things are getting worse, right?
We added there's like the real time little ticker at the top, and I think Any other questions and whatnot coming in?
No, just there's some Pyre talk, which is exciting, and we will specifically about the hard choice in Pyre regarding a particular character's mustache.
Oh well, I'm sure we will get to that in detail tomorrow. We will cover that
in so much depth. Yeah. Probably spend over 90 minutes talking just about mustaches. Yeah. So if you are mustache minded right now, we're gonna have to hold your excitement until tomorrow's stream, where we'll play our third game and our biggest game that we've made, which is Pyre.
But now we will. Someone asked before about the spine of the world, and here comes its subtle yet significant introduction. Mm-hmm. Here we go. There he goes. And now I'm losing you, starting to lose you. So this, a lot of stuff going on right here. Mm-hmm. And this is, no, you can't go back down this one. There's a later one that you could toggle up and down. It's another little elevator change. So something, the Transistor getting sick, as it were, was a whole thing for us. I read recently someone who is actually, it's both a compliment and something that made me feel really terrible, but someone who was like felt so sort of upset and scared at this moment where the Transistor starts getting sick and his personality is starting to be affected, that they could not like continue playing. They were so concerned at what the implications were going to be and how this aspect of the story was going to resolve, that he's going to wind up whatever dying of process illness or something, that they couldn't go on. So on the one hand, I guess high five on the emotional impact of that, but it's never obviously the goal for it to have that intense of an effect on people. But we did a lot of stuff to have this kind of brief portion of the story where the Transistor is impacted and he starts talking in a more candid way. We had to like handle how he switches back and forth when you go into the sandbox and do all this weird justification for it.
In some ways the sandbox was intended to provide a little bit of relief from the experience you described.
Everything is starting to fall apart for you. Basically at this point in the story, the city is unraveling. Your only friend is deathly ill. It's not going well for Red right now.
Yeah.
Or for the rest of Cloudbank.
There is a question about just a number of references to coding methods, computer systems. What is the world of Transistor? These kinds of questions, and I think we sort of touched on answers to this earlier, which is the influences of the game about what is the nature of the world. I think are at the heart of the experience here.
Yeah.
And so when you see those references, the way they make you feel and the way they make you think about what's going on, I think all of that's intentional.
Yeah, and we, from the point of view of the characters in the world, it's the world they know, or maybe not so much things like Crash and Breach. The Transistor and the processor are things that citizens of Cloudbank would find to be very alien, but the rest of the kind of reality of the game, the kind of the mix of these computer-like elements and elements that feel more familiar. We wanted to strike a balance that felt right to us with that. Let's try. I'm trying to max out some of my function combinations here.
Oh yeah, try and unlock everything. Yeah.
Red is complete.
Yeah, she's completely decrypted here, right?
Yeah.
Which gives you a more straight, sort of like a straight reading of what happened to her. That requires a little bit less interpretation than the flashback scene.
Yeah, though some interpretation.
Yeah, some interpretation. Still required,
And let's see. We really need to work on Breach here, actually.
Yeah. It needs to be passive and it needs to be an upgrade, right? No, it's been an upgrade. It hasn't been a passive.
Yeah. No, has it been an upgrade? Well, it definitely hasn't been a passive. So that is for sure.
More turn planning juice.
Yeah.
When does the pirate stream start tomorrow? I think we're shooting for around 9.
Yeah, 9 Pacific.
Yeah.
Today we started closer to 9:30 or so.
Yeah, so it probably will be similar tomorrow. It'll probably be in that 9 to 9:30 range.
And we'll post about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Follow Supergiant Games, and we will make it known.
A lot of people are itching to ask questions about the spine, and you will have an opportunity to do so very soon. Magikarp is asking if Transistor film was made. Who would you pick to play Red and the Transistor?
Oh boy!
So the Transistor is easy. I would have Logan. I would have Logan play the Transistor.
That's right. Correct answer.
Yeah, I think I can't imagine someone else doing that. And of course we channel. Sometimes we do vocal reference where we're trying to channel someone. But that doesn't mean we would want that person to play that character instead.
On this character there wasn't like with Rux there were more specific vocal references that we referred to when finding that character, but with the voice of the Transistor it really was just kind of like based on Logan's actual voice.
So I'm gonna fire off like 6 spine questions for you, Greg, and you can start chipping away at them. So what is the spine? Is it just a big process? Is the Transistor just lagging? There was a earlier question about, is it part of the, Lyric is asking, is it part of the process? Is it the central computer code from Cloudbank? So
just all those things.
Yeah, so if you could just answer everything.
I mean, the spine certainly on the so we will see it in the following stage, kind of in more detail, but certainly it appears to be a very, very large specimen of the process, and our point of view on it was like just being close to this thing at all. It has such a overwhelming impact that it is affecting the transistor itself, because the process as a used in the plural, as a collective is overwhelming the city at this point. And things like the spine are causing a lot of damage. Our sort of this speech, I feel terrible cutting the speech off. Yeah. We wanted the equivalent of almost like a giant monster disaster movie feel, and in fact, the Bracket Towers stage after this we refer to internally as Monster, as in like Cloverfield or Godzilla or something like that, showcasing the spine and culminating in that. It's like kind of harassing you the whole time through that level. The transistor is getting sick, and ultimately you confront it, and Red threatens to rip out its heart and does exactly that as one of the most sort of intense actions that she takes in the game. So it meant to have like a cathartic feel, has like a really we'll get to it. I think the side-scrolling sequence at the end of that stage is like also one of the visually more stunning moments in the game. Art team being busy around here.
Yeah, so there's also the question of what is there any purpose to the access points, asked by Nikki, scattered around CloudBank other than interfacing with the transistors? So I think there is like
a fictional person.
Yeah, there is like an implication of what they're used for, right?
Yeah, well, we thought of them as like it's a little bit different so the OVC terminals are suggestive of like almost like information kiosks that would have been used, day to day by the citizens of CloudBank. But something like the access points is more like a kind of like a manhole cover. Like you walk by it day to day in the street, you don't think anything of it. You don't wonder what's down there in the sewers. But with the transistor, suddenly all these manhole covers that everybody's ignored throughout their entire lives, they do something. And the transistor can like interface with the city directly, but that's not something that the average citizen of CloudBank would be able to do. And let's give give the transistor some relief.
Yeah. So for this next back door, if you need to take a break, Greg, I can do some challenges.
Sure.
Yeah.
I may take you up on that. I've been hogging the controls the entire time.
No, it's fine. Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, let me tag out for just a moment. I will be right back.
Yeah,
that sounds. I'll take you up on that. Be right back.
Yeah, for those of us with me now, we are going to play through the entire game, and I think we're probably at the halfway point ish. Maybe a little bit later of playing through Transistor. We're now in the sandbox. I am finally playing, which means you will see significantly more failed attempts at trying to succeed at getting through this game, even though I'm the one who tuned a lot of this. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm Amir Rao, the studio director of Supergiant Games, and I did a lot of the game design, systems tuning, and level content that you see in Transistor. The nice thing about playing sandboxes for me is that I didn't design a lot of these challenges. I only went into them and tried to beat them. Gavin Simon, who is our gameplay programmer and does a lot of our engine programming, all this kind of stuff, he actually designed a lot of these challenges. He's really good at taking the mechanics of a game and pushing them into their more like challenging forms. So these planning tests are actually focused around getting you to think a little bit harder. So if you've just been spamming crash and breach, you actually have to use a lot of the different sub-mechanics of the game in order to beat this one. So like, for example, you have to backstab. And if you use crash followed by any other function, the second function that comes out after is usually more powerful. So I'm going to undo my plan here, get behind this guy, get a crash into his back, which is also a backstab, followed by a breach, which gets the combination from the crash and is a backstab, followed by one more breach. It says I should kill him as a result, and we're going to see if we take out this jerk. And I do. So these tests are interesting to me because unlike some of like maybe the survival ones, they actually have like solutions. They're kind of like puzzles. And I mentioned earlier that puzzles were something that we kind of like went away from early in Transistor design, like puzzles based around trying to activate switches in real time or using turn. And in the case of those particular types of tests, we actually they actually do function like puzzles. They are puzzly in their nature. I am gonna try going into this performance test.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back, Greg.
How's it going?
Good. What do we have this time? We have a performance test, and these are about.
This is kind of like choose.
Yeah, you get like a subset of your loadout, right?
And you keep gaining more. This is a cool Gavin invention that kind of staged. Yeah, going through multiple waves and sort of almost like growing your character each time. A little bit more open-ended than some of the other types of tests challenges.
Yeah, another thing that happens here is like any limiters you've been using, it turns it off.
Yeah, so it's a more standardized. Some of them would become like, I think, just completely impossible.
Yeah,
right?
with the limiters on. So it's just, I have only one function because I planned it out that way.
You could probably go to town on him in real time with that too.
Yeah.
Well,
when he's super fast, it ends up being hard. So the other thing about this is like semi-procedural, these challenges, the performance tests. Like I don't think you get the same. You don't necessarily always get the same set of functions served to you, or the same.
I think you, I think it's that it's like how you choose to use them. I think they were like the types of the enemies spawn in different, the process spawn in different places and stuff. Okay. But I think the functions you get are specific to each of the, like this is the test number 2 or whatever. I think you do always get these. Anyway, I'm sure you guys know better than we do at this point. Watching the stream.
Yeah.
Amir, we haven't. I don't know that I have played through Transistor so much in recent years.
No, I have not. This is my first time looking back at the game in a long time.
Yeah, we play. It's a game that took us 3 years to make, and it's not like a 200-hour game or whatever. So we play a lot of our own game during the course of development, and we love our games dearly. And at the same time, once these games have flown the coop, as it were, once they have been launched and things have settled down on the initial launch, I think we all value having some distance from them. You're like ready to kind of cleanse your palate creatively and move on to whatever the next thing is going to be.
There's also the sense that like, I think as game developers, it's sometimes hard to look back at your game right after it comes out because there's nothing else you can do. It's like whatever it's going to be, it is, and it's in the world now. It's kind of almost not even yours anymore. And so I think it's a lot easier for me to play it today, 4 years later, almost like someone discovering these things, than it is for me to play the games like right after they come out.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. Mm-hmm. That's something that, whatever. We've worked on a number of games together now, not just at Supergiant, but previously at Electronic Arts, working on Command & Conquer 3 and Red Alert 3 and stuff like that. And it's like the part where you can no longer work on it and have put it out there, that part is still like I'm somewhat more used to it over time, but that's a tough moment every single time. I've definitely made, I think my mindset around that moment has gotten healthier than maybe it once was, where it's just kind of, it's a natural part of the process, because if you care about what you're working on and you work on it for 3 years, like of course you're going to feel that way at the end of it, and just you and Darren were talking about this yesterday as I was watching on the stream, but there's something to be said for just being able to finish something and put it out there, knowing that it's taken the identity that it's going to have, and whether it's sort of perfect or not is like not even the question anymore. It's just kind of like, is it itself? And we kind of reach those moments in development where we feel like the really essential design choices have been made, and now we just need to finish what we started and get it out there and see what everybody says, and hopefully kind of be able to make something else after that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how long this game was in development, and the thing you're alluding to is that aspect that like a lot of what Transistor was, it was a long pre-production, but by the end of pre-production, it was what it was going to be.
Yeah, that's right.
We could have spent another year or something trying to noodle with it, but frankly, I think the identity was basically seared in, and all we were doing was completing the path we had set forth for ourselves.
Yeah,
I almost lost that challenge. So
they get tough.
Yeah,
that's the point. Yeah.
So I myself am going to take a brief break.
Okay.
And hand it over back to Greg.
Yeah.
And
how was it playing? How was it playing Transistor?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, you've had a couple hours more practice than me at this point, but it's interesting to come back to it. I'll be right back, guys.
I will try. I'll probably stick around the sandbox in the meantime. This is one of the inspiration for the speed tests. It may be somewhat obvious when I say this, but aspects of it are unexpected. It's this is a really dated reference actually. Back in old like newspapers, they would have these like chess puzzles that were like mate in one move. So it would be like a chessboard setup, like saying that, or mate in 2 moves or something like that. So the chessboard is set up a certain way with knights and rooks and pawns and whatever, and saying within 2 moves, set up a checkmate type of scenario. And we were excited about that kind of almost puzzle-like idea here that I'm failing miserably in this particular case. You having to use turn very efficiently and resolve like a puzzle scenario. So here, a couple of these enemies are protected and invincible, so I need to efficiently sort of... But also when I use load, this kind of destructive ability, it spawns farther away from me. So I need to move farther away from this guy, but in such a way where I can cause the packet to blow him up. The thing about turn, though, is I have unlimited time to sort of plan it out. I just have to get it right. So that should blow up the first cheerleader. I collect his cell. I think I failed because I was absent-minded in the first use of turn, but the second time I should be able to pull it off. Maybe I can do it. That's a bad place to start my turn, but okay, that's not good. And then the other subtle thing that we liked about these is, like, again, it's just kind of I need to try and catch both these guys in one blast. It might be possible. Yeah, that should do it in theory. It's still, again, man, he moved out of the way a little bit. It's allowing you to play with new function combinations and discover combinations that maybe you haven't tried yourself. 0 seconds to go. The nail biters. If only a mirror was here to witness. Yeah, so the sandbox was fun. We like having these kind of optional... Each of our games has had these kind of optional challenges in it that you can engage with as much or as little as you want, and we still try to make it feel like part of the world and part of the story. The Who Knows Where sequences in Bastion and the Proving Grounds, and then the sandbox tests here in Transistor, and then in Pyre we have the Beyonder Crystal. It was kind of the counterpart system there. When we go to the hammock, Amir mentioned this earlier. At each point in the story, you get, it's kind of like unique to where you are in the story, which was kind of fun to do. There are even some like relatively obscure gags with some of these moments. This scene, yeah, I love how Gen Z, our art director, created this particular scene. It's almost like an 80s, like very just very almost like kind of a Tron inspired scene, as opposed that is meant to feel distinctly different than the rest of Cloud Bank. Who's a good girl? Talking to Luna, our trusty companion there. I think we cleaned out all of the sandbox trials here for now, the tests. So let's return to Cloud Bank. Thank you very much, by the way, for tuning in. It really means a lot. We've never gone back and streamed Transistor since we created it, since we released it back in 2014. So it really means so much that folks out there still remember this game, still have a fond memory of it, and our work in general. You guys, we wouldn't be here. We simply wouldn't be here at Supergiant were it not for folks who have picked up our games and enjoy them. All of our games have been self-funded by our studio. We make the games that we want to make, but the games that we think will connect with folks out there, that we make these trade-offs by each of our games has been different, but we really hope that with each one we'll create an experience for folks out there that will live up to our past games for you. That's our foremost goal each time, and we do so. It's a scary process because we know that, if you play Bastion and you love it, we know that a simple answer to what else would you want to see us do would be just like, well, why not just give you some more Bastion then? But instead we made Transistor, and we're a small team, so these things all come with a trade-off, and we chose to make a new game with Transistor, and we're at this point, and we weren't always sure we were making the right decision, but with a little bit of hindsight, we're so glad we did, because we know many of you out there enjoy this game even more than you enjoyed Bastion, or maybe you haven't played Bastion. That's all good too. So it means a lot. It's cool to go back and play it too. And then when we get to Pyre, we're gonna stream Pyre tomorrow, starting around 9 o'clock Pacific. That game is fresher on our minds. We released it only a year ago. But that game was another kind of even a bigger departure than Transistor was from Bastion, and it was really interesting to see what everyone thought of that game in turn. There we go. That was pretty swell. One of the funnier lines from Logan Cunningham in this game. So we're down to Mask is a cool one. It's like some of these, even though Transistor is a science fiction game, some of these functions owe to kind of like fantasy RPG playstyles, and Mask is your, like, if you like being a thief or a rogue in your RPGs, Mask is for you, because it's all about sneak attack, backstab gameplay, like that classic kind of D&D rogue, hide in shadows, get behind somebody, double or triple damage or whatever. Mask enables you to play that way, and enables some pretty interesting real time. Oh, we can. Man, more mem is kind of juicy at this point, but we should go with another. Mem is.
I think we need more mem.
Yeah.
So a side note right now. I just ate lunch because JP gave us lunch.
Yeah.
So if you need to eat at any point, feel free to do such a thing. But really, it's a segue I want to make because I want to give a shout out to anyone who streams for a living. Yeah. And does these 12-hour streams and stuff. It's super amazing to be with you here, and doing it ourselves, I think, gives me a ton of respect for what everyone does who streams to giant audiences every day. We're happy to be here with the 2,700 or so of you who have joined us and are watching our stream today. I'm Amir, this is Greg, and we're playing through our second game that we worked on together along with the team of 12, Transistor. Yesterday we streamed Bastion, tomorrow we're streaming Pyre, and those are the 3 games from our studio, all available on Steam right now. And thank you for being here with us.
Yeah.
So
we're pretty deep into this.
Yeah.
Into this game at this point.
And in typical Greg and Amir fashion, I think we have a backlog again.
I see. We should hammer away at some. The tragic mistake I made is I'm too far away from the questions, so I'm just yammering on generating more questions while you are away.
It's all good.
So
let's see what we got here.
Let's see. Yeah.
More questions about the Camerata symbol and the symbolism of it. And I know we talked about how giving away giving away the symbolism can be fraught. But I don't know if there's anything more to talk about with the Camerata logo. Even actually, the revision it took, which you alluded to earlier with the trailer.
Yeah, well, that was more to the Camerata cast. You know, the symbol of the Camerata, we landed on pretty. We landed on sort of more fluently. It's easier to talk about when it's on screen. You'll see the insignia, I think, in some of the kind of cutscenes, but it is in reference to the symbol of CloudBank, which I think is probably back here. It's kind of like the equivalent of the city. Is it? I thought I saw it, but maybe not. It's all around the city,
and it's in the inspect screens and stuff, I think, right?
Yeah, yes, it should definitely be on the terminals and stuff like that. But the Camerata symbol is in relationship to the symbol of CloudBank and suggestive of their point of view. The Camerata are all about having a specific view on how their city should be, and it's a highly democratized city, and they're a group of people who feel that their point of view is more significant than that of the masses.
Yeah.
And they execute a plan. Yours to decide whether the plan was in good faith or not in its inception, but it goes horribly awry over the course of this game, of course. Please notify your local administrator. We're off to visit such an administrator rather soon.
Yeah. Questions about, are you guys interested in making sequels, or do you prefer making something new every time? I think we talked a little bit about some of our... Oh, what was that?
That was Mask. That's like the critical hit of the...
but that was with Crash on Mask.
Yeah. That's with Ping on...
Look, it looks like Crash on Mask down there.
Oh, Crash on Mask. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What is this doing?
It's weakening everybody.
Right.
And then... Well, it's just so funny. I completely... that was like genuine surprise. I didn't mean to... I have no memory of, of what that combination does.
Well, there are thousands of them.
So it was exciting to see. Because one of the other interesting things is like having to provide the visual feedback, right?
Yeah.
Is like the effects of all these things are pretty different, so people kind of have a sense of what...
Yeah, it's disrupting everybody.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Oh, it's stunning. It's doing like an area of effect stun on everyone around
and then
me.
When you come out, you're going to do a critical hit coming out of it, which is an exciting moment. Boom.
Boom.
All right, yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep. There is like Wall of Illusion said the particular terminal we were in last time feels like something that shouldn't be left up to a democratic choice. But I think that's like in theme, right? That was about the search. The search. Wasn't it about the search?
Yeah, I don't remember what the content of that one was, but I mean that sounds like something that Camerata would say. So and that is like. That is a debate that surely would be taking place throughout the city, and the story we wanted to explore is like in a city that had moved past any sort of traditional terrestrial. CloudBank doesn't have problems with, say, homelessness or something like real problems that modern metropolitan areas face. But it still has its own... What problems would people have when they moved past problems like that? And that's some of what the story is exploring, of what it means to have a voice as part of a society. And the Camerata are characters, are people who decided that their voice it matters. Their voice is more significant, and they're gonna take matters into their own hands and try and do something about it. And it doesn't go as well for them as they hoped.
Is this our first emergency turn?
No, it's happened a few times. Yeah, it's happened on. I'm actually. I better take this a little more seriously.
Yeah, otherwise we'll be replaying.
Although the game over, I'm sure we could talk about the game over screen.
So I guess I skipped over the question about sequels and
yes.
Kind of thing. I think we alluded to this earlier, but like we make games based around the preoccupations of the people here, and also based around like what we're in reaction to the last thing we made. And I think for the question of like how we decided to do the projects we did is really, really dependent on like how we felt coming out of the project, the one right before it. And I think we've just been in a place sort of twice now, because the first one doesn't count, where we're interested in exploring new worlds and new ideas and new characters, and that's how we kind of arrived at where we have been.
Yeah, it's we really love each of the worlds that we've created, and we put the work into them. We think it's yours to this moment.
Oh yeah, this is
so
worth talking about.
It is. This is a moment. I love that this moment. I see this moment quoted by fans of this game, and I really, really it means a lot to me that it stood out to people. It was the sort of the inside baseball it's pretty late breaking change, probably in the last, and it's funny because it's funny, and the correct word is terrifying, not funny. That in each of our games, I can name you in Bastion, Transistor, and Pyra, like there are some really late breaking changes to the narrative that had a really big impact, because it's only at the end of development that the whole thing is stood up and you finally see what the kind of the gaps and the opportunities are. And this was a point in the game where by now you should have a sense of what the relationship is between Red and the voice coming from the Transistor, and it was we were playing it too close to the vest earlier in development, and I think it was feedback from Logan and also from Sarah El Male, I think, late in development, that was like we had our sort of silver bullet changes. We're only a few kind of weeks or months away from being done with the game, but this was one of the scenes where his defenses are lowered, he's being affected by the spine, and this is when he's going to just blurt something out that maybe he would not say as overtly, but it made sense here, and I'm glad it stood out. We were talking about something totally different before, but that's fine. Okay.
That's going to keep happening.
Yes, yes, it will.
Third Koopa asked earlier, was there a temptation to make more Bastion before Transistor officially started? There was, and we did.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, that's 100% what happened.
Dream.
So in the version of Bastion you play on Steam today, it's just it's the final version of it. But there was the Stranger's Dream stuff, and there was also the fourth. No, that was the fourth Who Knows Where.
Yeah.
There was also the No Sweat mode.
Though that was in the same update.
Yeah,
it was
Score
Attack. Yeah, it was all part of the same kind of package.
So we added all that stuff into Bastion kind of after its launch.
It was like at the end of that year. I think.
Yeah.
It was part of like the in December or something like that.
Yeah, and for us it was really like exciting to do a little bit more. And I think the stuff we added, it wasn't like, oh, we just didn't get a chance to do it. It's just after the game came out, we were still feeling like doing a little bit of Bastion stuff, and we did it.
Yeah.
We released that stuff as a free update, so that's just like part of the base experience now. It's in there. I think all of that was basically wrapped before we started Transistor. So
that's right.
It wasn't really like happening at the same time.
Well, we did the thing.
We're just like sitting here trying to remember 2011.
No, so the really big exception was that we were definitely, and you guys talked about this, I think, to some extent yesterday, but the iPad, iPhone version of Bastion,
and Mac
we spent a lot of time working on, and we were working on that still while in the early days of Transistor. We're still trying to figure out what Transistor was. It was actually kind of going kind of slow, as tends to be the case in early pre-production on a game that you don't quite know exactly what it's going to be, and we were figuring out. We made Bastion for iPad at that time, and then it was all hands on deck on Transistor from then on out. We set it was once we were done with Bastion for iPad, then everybody was,
it was like full
Transistor
time
all the time.
Yep. Yeah. K1B0 asked, do you create the mechanics of the game first or the story of the game first?
Always a classic.
Yeah, classic question. It's a good question, especially for games like ours, which have both.
the simple answer is we do create the mechanics first, just straight up. We're like a gameplay driven, prototyping driven studio. It's never the case that we like have like a script or a story and like build a game around that. Because we think part of developing a good narrative for because we think the kind of games we want to make have to have both aspects sort of in equal measure that work in concert with each other. And so we have to figure out what mechanics we're working with, what the play experience is going to be like, so that we know how the story can be told. But we think a lot about tone and theme in the early days. So it's not like the gameplay prototyping is sort of divorced from any sense of so we work on both together in some respects, but there's a lot of like actual gameplay prototyping that's there at the outset. You may have more.
I think it's both. Part of why pre-production has taken so long for us is like there's both like the narrative and then there's also how we deliver that narrative. And so we should do a lot of experimentation on what combination of voiceover or text or anything else we're going to use in order to effectively deliver the narrative. And then meanwhile, we do all this creative development on the game to try and make sure the systems in the world are all tied together, but those systems are actively being changed.
Yeah.
So there's just like an eternal process of putting that stuff together in different ways to make it work. There's no recipe either.
No, there really isn't
for that. So I think it's tempting to want to say, oh, well, we definitely have the whole world, and then we figure out a game inside of it, or we figure out what the game will be, and then we have a whole world inside of it. We make those things in concert, and hopefully it shows in like what we have produced.
Yeah, and there's always like part of one. It is part of our development process to kind of be mindful of how we like to think about how the pieces fit together, and once as we develop our games mechanically, how does that fit in with the play experience and the theme and so on? So having a sense of what the theme of the experience is going to be like is helpful as like a way to sort of allow those, both the narrative and the play, to sort of develop on their own, but then kind of meet back in the middle when they need to, without being too constrained by each other.
We could probably safely say in pre-production, the themes are more resilient than any single mechanic, right? Or any single level prototype or something. Like we try to, that stuff doesn't really like necessarily like evolve over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like I'm doing this terribly.
You only have to stay alive.
Oh, that's right. At the same time, it's the nice thing about a theme is it can be quite broad. So like
it can be reinterpreted.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about is like if we choose themes that I think I learned this became acutely aware of this from like conversations with you from way back when. But it's like we want to explore themes where there's something to unpack. If we feel like we have all the answers about it sort of early on, it's like our themes are never like, it's good to forgive people or something. It's like if it's just kind of self-evident, it's like, well, there's not much. There's not much there. It has to be something that's more open-ended to us, so that we're like, oh man, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this, and I can see how over the course of 3 years, my feelings about this will evolve. Yeah. But it's something that we can keep coming back to in thinking about the experience as a whole. And then even just like when the game is then nearly complete, I find myself, it's like, hey, is this, thinking back to like when it all started, with a game like this, it's like, oh, it's not that this game being a love story is not the theme specifically, but as an example, it was interesting to see that we did sort of end up doing the things that we set out to do with this game, even though it took such a circuitous path to get there.
Yeah. I mean, and that long road produced a lot of a lot of work that the end result is obviously represented in the final game, but like there's stuff that doesn't ship right as a result.
Yeah, tons of it.
Tons of lines we wrote, or levels we tried, or enemies we tried, or concepts that just don't end up making sense when you actually try and fit them into to the game you have.
And some of the toughest moments in development are like, sometimes you get rid of stuff that's good.
Yes.
It's not just because most of the time it's because it's not that great.
Yeah.
But there are times when there's something that's like quite good, that just doesn't fit anymore with the rest of it. And I would like to think that over time we've gotten at least some. Those are still tough moments in development, I think, all the time. But I think we've gotten somewhat better at like identifying when those moments come up, and it's like, hey, this isn't about like this work isn't good enough. It's about how it just doesn't fit the bigger picture at the moment. And we as a small team, we have to make tough choices about where to spend our time. And
the secondary version of that is actually maybe sometimes less about fit, but you make some, like, often in game development, you have this fantasy, even as a game maker, that like, I've done a thing, the feedback was good, so it is done.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is everything else in the game kind of gets better or improves or evolves in some way, and suddenly a thing which you were pretty convinced yourself was like done, and actually the people around you helped you come to the conclusion that it might be done, it turns out is now one of the things in the game that kind of sticks out of it.
Yeah.
And then you end up having to go back and look at that again.
And those are scary moments, right? Because you're like, it leads to this sense of uncertainty throughout development that because it's natural to start to get attached to some aspects of the work you did. You put all this time into it and whatever, and you're like, you don't know. You think it's done, but you really don't know.
Yeah.
And we have these moments all the time where sometimes, it's like you said, where you were pretty sure it was done and turns out it wasn't. There are other times when things that you were pretty sure were not done, in fact, end up being done, and you don't come back to them.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a meme with game industry artists that like whatever calling shipping assets that have like temp in the file name or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you thought it was a temporary asset or something,
Yeah.
but not that's the one you're gonna go with.
Yeah, we joke about that internally, the sort of I thought that was temp sort of thing. It's interesting that even as a team that has worked together for a really, really, really long time and communicates together really well, that the game is still this like evolving set of standards and like you can't know what a finished or complete thing is. Like you only start to have that sense really towards the end, where it's like, wow. And you know what helps give you that sense is when you make a change and you've made it worse. So like that's one of my favorite also moments in game development, is where you arrive to that point where you're like, where you've been addressing maybe mostly just your own notes on something. Like, I need to make this a little bit, and you think you're getting it closer and closer and closer and closer, and then you make the change that makes you or the people around you like it less, and that's when you realize, holy crap, I'm close. I'm actually closer than I thought to a thing that's like working, and now is so many things around it are so reliant on it that when I make a change, it's really
noodling
disruptive.
around is not like the.
This is a good combo.
Yeah, this is actually pretty
the
effective.
load.
We also have the here we go. This is a cool one. Internal internal to development, that we call this the Archon,
which is a reference actually to Diablo 3 if you ever played the Wizards
or StarCraft.
Yeah.
Blizzard many good Archons, I guess.
The thing that's cool about that power, right, is it's the one that
it's the passive. It's the help passive that gives you like a chance for
X to dissolve.
It insta kills, or it does just like a ton of damage. But it just happens sometimes on turn activation. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, you occasionally get this like more
super user status.
Super user status. I love the load on thing.
That's that kind of like Archon super user. That's a good example of one of those things where it's just like a completely special case for that particular context.
Yeah,
could try
But it's an example of like not equal work was required or applied to every single one of these function combinations, because sometimes they just kind of work when we combine them. The effects just kind of work together, and sometimes we had to invent a whole new unique thing for some combination. What's fun about that is it actually fits neatly with what Greg was talking about earlier about sometimes you do this work that a really small percentage of your players end up experiencing. And it can be tempting to not do that work because you're like, well, who's going to see this really?
Yeah.
But sometimes that extra effort, it's the stuff that people become most attached to. And I'm sure there's someone out there who is like a huge super user fan. Or I really hope
that
there
person
is
because
me. Because it was a lot of work. But it's one of those examples where you always kind of like, nice. You always kind of hope. You don't know when you're making it. You always kind of hope, like, I hope this is someone's favorite thing.
Yeah, my personal philosophy on that is like the audience is like you're making these choices for the smallest audience, not the biggest ones.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same mindset that informs our decisions to like put time into the endings of our games. It's like, yeah, by definition, not everyone who plays our games is going to get to the end, but we make our games for the people who do get to that point. The work is worth it for them to say that, you know, we don't explicitly include a thank you on behalf of the development team for investing your time and energy into reaching this point in the game, but like putting an ending is our way of doing so. We want people to feel like the time and effort that they invested in the money is that it was well spent.
So we just crossed 3,000 viewers.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you for everyone who is joining us here on our stream of Transistor. I'm Amir, and this is Greg.
Hello.
We're 2 of the 12 developers who worked on Transistor, Supergiant Games' second video game. Yesterday we streamed our first game, Bastion. Tomorrow on Saturday, starting around between 9 and 9:30 Pacific time, we're going to be streaming our third game, Pyre. All of our games are currently available on Steam, and they're on a discount right now if you are interested in trying them or getting them for a friend. And we are, I think, about to wrap our set of optional challenges. I think it's time to dive back because I think they're all the doors are closed to us now.
No more procrastinating against the spine. Time to face the music out there.
And so we're headed in. JKB8, you got to take off. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your emojis with us, among other things. Magikarp is asking, kind of off topic, but would you consider a reissue of the Transistor vinyl? The answer is yes. We are looking into that, and if you're interested in it, we have a mailing list that you can sign up for where you'll be one of the first to know about the reissues, and also follow us on Twitter. I'm sure we'll talk about it there. So if I had an exact time, I would just tell it to you, but just know that that's something that we're looking into. The spine!
Yep.
I anticipated what he was going to say.
Yeah.
So this is like an example of a level that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. There's a lot of special stuff that happens in this level, not the least of which is the spine. But the other is actually it's one of the largest spaces you explore. Like actually most of the high-rise spaces are.
Yeah, high-rise is just kind of bigger in
kind
general.
of bigger. So, tuning the combat here, tuning the progression through here. Getting the spine to interact with look right and interact with all the other game systems. This is what we consider like the second boss fight, right? The first was the
one. That's right.
Yeah, but it's just it's one of those things where just getting it to look right, feel right, and give you the sense that you're scaling a giant building with something even bigger at the top of it.
Yeah,
was an important thing to get.
And it was like something, we didn't attempt anything like that in Bastion, so yeah, it was a new experience for us to try to pull that off and just have this massive. Also, just like from a combat perspective, it was exciting to think about like, okay, you've gotten used to the process, now you have to additionally deal with this massive thing, just trying to crush you at every turn. It's more opportunities to use turn in new ways. In this particular moment, it's like, you can use it to clear the way for you. Or just
you were
smash you.
I think you were fine.
bunch of people who are saying great games. Keep up excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wall of Illusion asks, why does he call it the spine?
Yeah, it's a fine question. Red is a famous musician in this world, at least leading up to the events of this game, and the voice coming from the Transistor would be someone who is a fan of her music, like many other people, and the song "The Spine of the World," or just "The Spine" that you hear earlier in the game, would be a song with which he might be familiar, and he might just make that connection. But he's a little bit loopy right now during this sequence. The massive thing that's kind of harassing you in this part of the game, it seems to be affecting him. So he's kind of sounds... He's being pretty silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is our... He sounds like he perhaps has had one too many at a local establishment.
Yeah, this I think also like performatively is some of Logan's
we
more amazing work in this segment of the game. E. Galvin asks, I love that the weapon upgrades and functions are meaningful. What are your thoughts on simply upping damage per second and crafting upgrades from tons of junk you collected throughout the game? This is a good question. So games that have those systems, I think are great for what they're trying to achieve. For us, we were just interested in something different with this, because as we were talking about with a function system earlier, we're really interested in the relationship between different powers and combining them and seeing what you get, the experimentation around that. Like red doesn't linearly increase in power. There isn't like a bunch of single-use damage upgrades or something like that. Games that have that stuff, I love. I love a lot of games that are just about like linear power increase. And I think there's certainly nothing wrong. It's just for Transistor, we were interested in trying something a little bit different. And so it really rewards experimenting with different power types, experimenting with different function combinations, opening up the second slot, so suddenly you get a triple stack of different effects, and kind of rewarding the player for feeling smart and exploring these interesting ideas.
It's also some of the strategy influence on this game in particular. It's like straight up linear power growth in a game like... It's really satisfying in like action RPGs like Diablo, just to get stronger and stronger.
Or like an MMO or something like that.
Yeah. Though in a game like this, we wanted it to... the typical encounter to be more... to have like a thoughtful feel. So if you're just like pumping DPS or whatever, that can be great for certain types of experiences, but in something like Transistor, where we wanted to keep you sort of actively thinking about how to navigate through each different encounter, it felt more right to just sort of grow the options available to the player, rather than just like scale your power.
Yeah. There is, it's not like we've never done a game that doesn't have like some sort of straight linear power growth, right? In Bastion, the kid levels up, he gets more health in addition to getting more slots for his distillery.
We're always fans of. I think in each of our games there is some version of like we do value like giving you more options over the course of the game as an indirect way of increasing your power versus just a straight linear power acquisition system. We find it engrossing. It's also like our games, on like with your MMO example, they don't have like they're not like completely open-ended games that you could play for like 1,000 hours. So it's part of it, not like that type of scaling. I think has made less sense to us in the particular games that we've made thus far.
Yep. There's a Wall of Illusion has an observation, which is it's crazy how many animation effects I don't ever see because I've figured out my favorite loadout and I never vary from it.
Yeah.
That's completely acceptable.
Yes. Glad you're seeing them now.
Yeah. I feel similarly, even though I worked on this video game, because I forget how many different combinations we had and how it feels to use the different types.
That's what we signed up for, right? That was the whole thing with the with the function system. It's like, what if you could combine any function in any context in any combination? It's like, wait, what's the math on that? That sounds a little scary, but it was so exciting
Yeah.
It sounded like such a cool system to us that it was one of those things where like, hey, why not? Let's maybe